Bonjour à tous. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our third lesson. Our third lesson, we're going to be looking at numbers, les nombres, en français, numbers. So, basically, when we're looking at numbers, just a small introduction. Usually, when it's beginner level, we are obliged or we're supposed to know just 0 to 60. 0 to 60 for the beginner level. But why should we look at 0 to 60 when we can just look at all the numbers from 0 to a trillion? I know when you say 0 to a trillion, it becomes something which is impossible, but I'll take you through all the numbers and we hope to explain the easiest or the quickest way of memorizing or remembering all the numbers. Because, for example, if you come across like a number, a big number, such as, for example, 39,656, you just literally write exactly how you're saying it in English. 39,000, meaning to say you need to write 39, then we put 1,000, and 6 plus 100, and what? 56. So there's a way of, or there's a shortcut of learning all the numbers instead of just focusing on 1 to 60, and you might be confused by other numbers such as 78 and 90, which take a different shape from the numbers that we're used to in English. So we're going to look at 0 to 19, 20 to 59, 60 to 69, 70, 79, 80 to 89, 90 to 99, 100 up to 1,000, then 1,000 and up to a trillion. So the last thing, we're going to look at examples and the small classwork, uh, a few numbers that you need to practice on. So the first or the most important numbers that you need to know, it's 0 to 19. The reason why we're saying these are the most important numbers is because all the other numbers that you will see as we proceed, they just recur or just a repetition of the same numbers that we would have looked at. Meaning to say, if you manage to memorize the trick that I said I wanted to teach you, I'll just say it before we start. So usually when you want to look at all the numbers, the summary of knowing how to say all the numbers in French, we need to know numbers 0 to 21. And why 21? Because 21 is a peculiar way that is written. That's the same way that 31, 41, and 51 follow, as well as 61. The changes, they start from 70, and we will look at them later. So you know 0 to 21, you know the multiples of 10, then you know all the numbers. Because, for example, if you know 80, if you want to say 86, it means you need to know 6. So that's all. That's why I'm saying the most important are 0 to 21 and the multiples of 10. But in this class, I'll just help you go through all the numbers so that you'll be able to say them and write them correctly. So the first number is zero. Zero, it's the zero in French. Un or un. On one. I'm sure some of you will be confused. Why are there two ways or two different ways of saying or writing one in French? If you remember in our last lesson, we talked about gender, and we said all words have gender. So the way you write, especially one, it is to agree with the gender of the noun in question. For example, if you want to say one boy, it's different from saying one girl because the genders biologically they're different. So in French, it is to agree. But in English, it's different because if it's in English, you just need to say one boy or one girl. The one doesn't change. But in French, it is to agree with the gender. So zéro, un, une, deux, trois, quatre, cinq, six, sept, huit, neuf, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So, if you remember, I mentioned that usually when the last letter is a consonant, it's not pronounced. And I'm sure now by this time we all know what consonants are. But you see that we're pronouncing set. the T is pronounced wheat, the T is pronounced nef, the F is also pronounced, even on this side is wheat. The reason being, there are also exceptions. When we say it usually, or we say most of the time, it means there are certain times where they are pronounced. And if you remember when we talked about the calendar, we talked about liaison. We said there's a connection if the last letter is what? A consonant and is followed by a vowel. For example, on this wheat, which is 18, the wheat the H or the ash is silent, so the X, there's a liaison, there's a connection between this and wheat, as well as on nef. So that's why we say disset, diswheat, disnef. We move on to 20 to 59. So now we're just going to look at numbers 20 to 59. So here I will just explain, I will just give you a summary of how to remember the numbers. Why? Because if you look from 22 to 29, it's just a repetition of the numbers that we have looked at before. For example, deux, trois, quatre, cinq, which you said is 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. The only thing that changes is 20, which is 20. This is why I said you need to know multiples of 10. We look at 30, which is 30. The only number also that changes is 30, which is also a multiple of 10. But 1, 2, 9, they don't change. The only difference is on 21 and 31, where we say 21 and 31. So on 21 and 31, there's A, which if you go back to our first class, I'm sure you were told that A means end. So if you say 21, it's more like 20 and 1. But from 22 to 29, you just write 20 plus the number that's following. For example, 22, 23, 24, 25. You need to say 22, 23, 24, 25. The same thing with, if you look at 31, it's also written as 31. You need to say there's 30 and 1. But from 32 to 39, we write them the usual way, the same way that we write them in English. For example, in English, we say 34. In French, it's 34, which is 30 and 4. If you want to say 37, it's 37. You need to say 30 and 7. So you need to pay attention on 21 and 31. This is the reason on the first slide I said the numbers or the most important numbers that might help us to remember all the numbers is 0 to what? 21. This is why we specifically said 21. We move on to the next one, which is 40 to 59. It's the same thing. We need to look at what? The difference. And the difference is on the multiples of 10. We look at 40 and 50. 40 and 50. The same method also follows on 41 and 51. 41, 51. 41, 51. You need to say 41, 51. It's more like 40 and 1. 51, it means 50 and 1. But from 42 to 49 is the same thing. 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49. 52 to 59, the same thing. 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59. Then we move on to 60 to 69. So 60 is 60. 60 is 60. So 61 follows that same rule where we say 60 and 1. So 61 becomes 61. 60, 61. We don't really say 61. There's the liaison part that we mentioned, so it becomes 61. Then 62 to 69, the same thing. 2, 3, 4, 5, just including the multiple of 10, which is 60. Then we move on now to the where we have a difference in French. So usually we have a one word that in English, which is 70, but in French we don't have that word which is equivalent to 70. It's more like math now. If you say 60, we said 60 from the previous slide. 60, we said it's 60. But we say 60 here. It means 60. So the difference between 60 and 70 is what? It's 10. So for us to say 70 now, it's 70. It's more like 60 and 10. So 60 plus 10 gives us what? Gives us 70. So usually, if you were to look at this, for someone who is starting the language for the first time, they might look at what? 71, and they think, what if I just say 60, 10, 1, which is literally 71. But it's wrong because 10 and 1, there's a number that exists if you say 10 plus 1, which is 11. So, whenever you see a number that ends with this, it means a 10. There are numbers that follow, which is 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and so forth. So, for us to continue counting from 70, we need to continue from 10 up to 19. So, now that's a difference from all the other numbers that we're looking at. Meaning to say 71 becomes 60 et 11. But on 71, if you notice, there's something that's still something that's common with the other 31, 41, 21, which is A, which is end. So even on 71, it's more like 60 and 11. So 60 plus 11 is what? 71. But the moment that we go to 2, it changes. It becomes 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79. So 72 is 70, is 60, 12, 60 and 12, 72, and so forth. 13, 14, 15, up to 19. Because 79 becomes 79, meaning to say 60 plus 10 or 60 plus 19, because 19 is 19. But you cannot say 71, which is wrong because 10 plus 1 is 11. That's why on 71 we say 71. Things keep remaining interesting, or they keep getting interesting as we continue our numbers in French. For example, if you're looking at the number 80, 80 is 20. 4 is 4, 20 is what? 20. So it's more like 4 20s. So 4 20s, it's 80. So 80, that's 80. Then when we move now to 81, now there's a difference because all the other ones from 31, from 21 up to 71, there was A, which is end. But now on 81, what changes is the S on 20 disappears. The moment that it becomes 81, 82, the S disappears. For example, we say 80 with the S, which is 80, but when we get to 81, it's 81. 81, which is more like 4 times 20, 80 plus 1, 81. So it's more like math. So if you ran away from math, I'm sure it's haunting you now. So 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89. This is 80 to 89. So you just write 4, which is 4, we write 20, which is 20, and if it's not 80, we don't put S. Then we write the other numbers 1 to 9. Remember, I said when we were beginning the lesson that the most important numbers are 0 to 21. This is the reason why I mentioned it, because now it's literally 21 to 29. So if you already know how to write 20 to 29, it becomes easier. And the numbers keep on getting interesting, but on this one it might be easier because we've already looked at the fact that if the last number is a dis, which is a 10, it means there is a number that follows 10, which is 11. So when you want to continue counting, you need to continue counting from 10 up to 19. So we say the 80 is 80, which is 4 20s. But if you look at 90 now, it's 90. It's more like 4 times 20, which is 80, plus 10, which is 90. So 90, 91. And now you're putting ons. Why? Because the number that follows 10 is 11. So now you're now counting from 10, from 11 up to 19. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So we go back, it's 4 plus 20 plus 11. So 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99. This is 90 to 99. Then we move on to the next one, which is 100 to 1000. So 100 is song. In English, we usually say 100. So there is also a tendency of using English in French, because if you want to write 100, you might, if you are now good with the numbers, you think one is un, then 100 is song, so un song. So there is no need of writing un song. You just write song, which is 100. So if you write song, you know that is 100. So in English, we say 105. So there's and in between 105, but in French we'll just write the numbers as they are. 100 is cent, and the rest is what? Cinq. So 105 becomes cent cinq, and 200 is deux cents. But the deux cents, if you look at the deux cents, it is an S. We need to say it's plural. These are 200s. So we say deux cents. But if there's another number after the whole number, the S disappears. For example, the next one, 215. 215, you see, it becomes 215. 215, the S disappears because there's another number which is following. 300 to 900, all of them, because they are plural, they're more than one, the cent is S. So 300 becomes 300, 400, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900. So another thing, if when we're looking at 8 as a standalone number, we say it with. But if there is another number or a word that follows, the T becomes silent and it's now we song. So we don't really need to say with song. We just say we song, which is 800. So cent is 100, 105, 105, 200, 200, 215, 215, 300 for 300, 400, 400, 500, 500, 600, 600, 700, 700, 800, 800, and 900, which is 900. Then we move forward, 1,000, million, billion, and trillion. So this is more interesting in the sense that if you look at a billion in English, it's called a million, and our trillion in English is called a billion. So it's confusing, but it's French. So 1,000 is mille. 1,000 is mille. 1 million is a million, the same autograph but different pronunciation. 1 million becomes a million, 1 billion a milliard, and 1 trillion becomes a billion. So 1,000 is a mille, a million is a million, billion is a milliard, trillion is a billion. Then now we're looking at what? We're looking at examples. To now to solidify the fact that I said the most important numbers are 0 to 21 and multiples of 10. All the numbers, they just repeat itself. They repeat themselves, meaning to say if you know how to count 0 to 21 and the multiples of 10 and also how to write them, you can write any number despite the figure. So number one, our first example is 75. 75. If you remember, when we reached 70, that's where we said we don't have an equivalent of the word 70. So we say 60. So the difference between 60 and 75 is 15. How do you then write 15? So 15 is cans. So 75 becomes 60 cans. We look at 105. We said 100 is cent. We don't need to write un song, so we just write song, cinq, and we don't put the end, which is et. We just write the numbers as they are, song, cinq, which is 105. Then number three, 2,346. 2,346, this is actually a bigger number. So to prove what I just said, if you were following, if you're listening carefully, I said when we are looking at numbers, especially big numbers, you write exactly how you are saying them in English. Exactly how you are saying them in English. So 2,346. So 2 is what? It's there. But it's not just two, it's two what? Thousand. What is a thousand? So it's mille, then you're left with 346. So we write 3 is what? Trois. But it's not just 3, it's 300. So we write, what? How do you write 100? Cent. Then we're left with 46. 40, it's 40, then 6 is 6. So exactly how you're saying it in English, 2346. We don't put the end in French. So it's 2346. 2346, 46. So we move on to the next one. It's 97,777. 97,777. So 97, how do you write 97? That's the first thing. We said 90 is 90, but there's a number that follows after 10, which is 11. But now we want 17 because 80 is 80. The difference between 80 and 97 is 17. So 97, that's 97. But we're not just saying 97, we're saying 97,000. How do you say 1,000? It's mille. So 97,000, that's 97,000. So it means the number that's left is 777. 700 becomes 700. Even if it's plural, we said if there's a number that follows after, we don't put S. So it becomes 700. And 77, we said 70 is 70, and 17 is 17. So if you combine 17, it becomes 77. So our number literally becomes 97,000, which is 97,777, which is 777. So the next number might be, you might not see it clearly, but it's 233,401. 233,401. So our number, how are we saying it in English? We're saying 233. How do you write 200? 200 is 200. 30 is 30. 3 is 3. But it's not just 233, it's 233,000. So we have to put the thousand. So it becomes 233,401. 233,401, which is 233,401. 233,401. So this is just an example because some of the numbers I didn't go through every number because we'd have spent the whole day here. But I was giving you what's important. I said you need to know 0 to 21 because 21 is written in a peculiar way. It has A and A. 1 which is 21. So you need to know 21 because the same way we write 21 is the same way that we write 31, 41, and 51, 61. The difference now starts when we get to 70, where we say we don't have an equivalence, which is 70, which makes 70 70. But the number that follows afterward, 70, is 11. So now we say 71. 71, we need to say 60 plus 11, which is what? 71. But we say 81. 81, which is 81, we don't put the A. So you need to know 1 to 21, multiples of 10. Write any number which is a big number the same way you're saying them in English, then you have all the numbers. So, merci beaucoup de votre attention. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope I managed to simplify the issue of numbers. Now, instead of learning 0 to 60, now we know 0 jusqu'à 1 billion. Merci, à la prochaine, and soyez bénis.